Hello, listeners. This is Janine
and Kristen
from Henrico Casa. You are listening to our podcast, Vigilant Voices. Living life every day. Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Vigilant Voices. We are so glad that you are choosing to spend a few minutes of your summer with us today.
Honestly, because we know there are so many things competing for your time, and it says so much about you that you're spending that time trying to know more about the challenges facing children and families so that no child faces continued abuse, neglect, or trauma.
Yes, so in our mind, you are no doubt a fellow Vigilant Voice, and we appreciate you.
Yes, and today we're talking about a milestone that brings excitement, sometimes a little anxiety to families everywhere this time of year, and that's kindergarten.
Ooh, okay. So let's say backpacks to buy, school supplies to label, all of those very cute first day of school photos and new clothes, right?
That are in your future.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah.
But for children who have experienced abuse, neglect, or trauma, starting kindergarten can feel different. While some children are excited, others may be walking into that classroom carrying experiences that make school feel overwhelming or maybe even unsafe.
Which is a lot for, let's say, a 5-year-old.
Yeah, a little one.
Right. So today we're going to spend a little time talking about kindergarten readiness, but I think through the lens of, really what does it mean to be ready for children who have experienced trauma, and how might we best support them during this really important educational transition, right?
Right. And this makes me think of Sasha, a little girl who was matched with one of our CASA advocates last year because Sasha met her advocate right around the time she was starting kindergarten. And so Sasha had a history of bouncing between parents, like one parent would gain custody and then lose custody, and then sometime later file a motion to regain custody, and it was just really back and forth. Yeah. And so in all honesty, neither parent was consistently providing the care Sasha needed, and her safety was a concern in both homes.
Yeah. And so this is kind of like alarm alerts going off, right, when we think about this situation and school, because children that bounce around like this are definitely at risk of not consistently attending school because of the lack of stability and structure.
Right. There's just so much that's bouncing back and forth. And so Sasha hadn't actually started school yet, but this was definitely on the advocate's radar as a concern for, when and where would she be enrolled.
And I think when most people hear kindergarten readiness, there's the clear things that they picture, right? So knowing letters, counting to 10, being able to recognize numbers, all of which are great.
Right. And, there's that little checklist for Virginia's schools that you kind of go through with the kids. So like, can you write your name? Can you identify these shapes? When you draw a person, do you include a waist?
Hold on, what? I don't remember this from when I was...
It's a real thing.
Okay.
Your drawing needs a waist and I think a neck, and it's all tied into like cognitive awareness.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really interesting though, right? But what research does tell us is that kindergarten readiness is really more than academics, and apparently that I didn't know, like drawing.
Right.
Don't ask for my drawings back then. But it's about being ready to learn.
Right. It's things like being able to separate from a caregiver.
Right.
How to follow simple routines. Can you express your needs? Can you manage big feelings? Taking turns, building relationships, so much.
Yeah. And I think, listener, as you know, we really sort of talk about, but what about our children who have experienced trauma, right? Because what we know is that these social and emotional skills may be underdeveloped and maybe significantly so.
Yeah.
And it's then much harder for those skills to develop because trauma changes the way a child's brain works.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. Like what's actually happening in their little brains. And I've learned to think about the brain in two levels. There's the upstairs brain that helps us, think and reason and solve problems. But then the downstairs brain is responsible for like our survival.
I like that. It kind of separates the two. And we know when we say survival, we're talking about that signaling of fight, flight, or freeze, right?
Right. And for children who have experienced trauma, their trauma kind of keeps them living like in the downstairs brain.
That's right. When a child or if a child has experienced instability, violence, neglect, chronic stress, what we know is that their brain is often on high alert all the
Yeah.
time. So they're constantly in that like fight or flight
That
mode.
Yeah.
And so instead of thinking, oh, what letter is this? I mean, while they're sitting in the classroom, I mean, their brain might be asking, who are these people? Can I trust them? Are they safe? Am I safe? What's going to happen? It's all a totally distracted brain.
100%. And while their brain is like trying to interpret and process all of those inputs on the inside, right? On the outside, they might look like a child misbehaving.
Right.
A child who is not sitting still, a child who's having a meltdown, maybe a child who's withdrawn from the class activity.
Yeah. And those are good examples because they don't mean that child is necessarily just being defiant.
Yeah.
There could be something else going on, and that behavior is actually, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to expect. I'm not able to regulate my emotions. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could be going through.
Yeah. And so all that being said, for children who've experienced trauma, kindergarten readiness looks different.
Sure does. For these children, what we see is that the readiness is often less about whether they know all of their shapes and all of the numbers, and really more about, whether they have the support and relationships they need in order to feel safe enough to be able to learn.
Yeah, and that's a great distinction.
And the truth is, children learn best when they feel safe and seen and connected to, whether it's their classroom, their teacher, their colleagues, peers, friends. Yeah.
Yep. So listener, let's talk about what we can do, right? As parents, caregivers, advocates, because we want to help. And the good news is that there are most definitely simple things we can do.
Yeah. And, the thing with change, and we'll say this is a positive change, like going to kindergarten, right? Exciting, but it's new.
Yeah.
It's different. It's
still a change.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's a transition. And it's a transition for all kids, right? And children who have experienced trauma often feel pretty anxious about the unknown.
Right.
We're really throwing something new at them.
Right. So we want to create predictability wherever possible, right? Create routines, especially for the mornings before school.
Right. And then I think we have to practice those routines and, talk about what's happening now, what's going to happen next.
Yeah. And the routines are just key, right? You could also help them create a better picture in their mind of what to expect, like as you're working through a routine. So maybe you can visit the school. Maybe you can read books about starting kindergarten. The more predictable the experience feels, the safer it becomes.
I think that's great. And frankly, I mean, for most of us, we all do better when we know what's coming.
Yeah.
Right?
In big transitions, like that first day of school, but I mean, also in little transitions that will happen again, like, throughout the day when you clean up things or when you go to lunchtime.
Right. And this is where sort of transition, we'll call them warnings, or rituals can really come into play. And I think our educators, for many of our listeners, know that they're really, really good at that.
Yeah.
They're forecasting, saying in 5 minutes, we're going to put those toys away. In 2 minutes, we're putting those, toys away. Or after lunch, we're going to head to school, right? I mean, it's
just like a little heads up.
Forecasting,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. And it's little, but it is big in helping children prepare mentally and emotionally for changes throughout their day even.
Yeah. So here's another tip that I think is really important for children with trauma, and that's to focus on regulation first and other expectations second.
Yeah, that's pretty important.
It is. So, before we head to school, it makes sense to first help them feel calm and regulated, like at that point. And maybe this looks like taking deep breaths when you wake up, or listening to calming music when you eat breakfast. Walking to school, because we know like physical movement is calming, or, maybe you give them like a little stress ball that they can squeeze while they're on the bus.
Yeah. Simply, I think what you're saying, Kristen, is that sometimes children need help calming their bodies down before their brains are even ready and open to learning.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
And here's something else that I think is really important, and that's to help the children build safe relationships at school.
Mm-hmm.
Ideally, you want to help them identify like a person, their person,
Yeah.
someone they know they can go to when they do need to feel safe or calm down.
Yeah. And as we've talked about a lot, one safe, stable, caring relationship can really help buffer the effects of adversity.
100%.
And, that's big picture, right? Like that's like how we know that our CASA advocates intervene and that intervention can change the trajectory of a child's life. But it can also be in the day to day, right? Just one relationship, a teacher aide, the principal.
Yeah, yeah. I know from personal experience, my kids needed to know they had someone to go to,
Yeah.
and I needed to know that
Yeah.
person would be ready for them,
Right.
right? And so the kids and I would kind of work together to identify who they wanted as, their quote safe person. And I would reach out to that person to let them know that they were like chosen.
Oh, they were the chosen one.
Yes.
But I mean, I would like to think that who wouldn't want to be chosen in that way
Right.
and feel like special that someone, and a child has chosen them as a safe person, And so listener, I guess this is the plug to say never underestimate, the importance of being ready and available, if that call comes, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so I like these ideas for how we can support vulnerable children to make the transition to kindergarten a bit easier. But now that we're talking, I'm also thinking about how this applies to CASA's work.
And and I think it definitely does. Our advocates have such a unique opportunity to ask really important questions to caregivers of our young children, right? Is the child enrolled in preschool? Do they have or, maybe need access to some early developmental screenings? Are there any concerns about development?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then, those are questions about the child themselves, but then questions to the caregiver like, do you need support of any kind with enrolling your child or getting them ready? Have you thought about what this transition will feel like for the child?
And I think those are great questions because preparing a child for school isn't just about, oh, here's your new backpack with school supplies.
Right. So true. It's about, helping them create the safety and stability that allows children to walk into that classroom ready to learn. And I'm really happy to report that Sasha gained that safety and security.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's just in time for school because you said school was starting soon, right?
Yes. So Sasha's CASA advocate was able to provide the court with independent observations and recommendations that helped inform the judge's decisions regarding Sasha's safety and like where she should live long term. And so Sasha was enrolled in school, the district close to that home.
Yeah.
And her advocate was able to monitor her adjustment to her new home and her new school.
Yeah.
And so Sasha's school attendance and, her academic performance, like I'm doing air quotes, listener, because she is only in kindergarten, but her academic performance were seen as indicators of her stability because she's doing great.
Love that. I think that's great for Sasha, for her, family. I mean, I think that's all excellent. But I also think there may be listeners that are wondering like, well, okay, what if though a child just isn't ready? What if they've experienced just so much and it just is all too overwhelming?
Yeah, then this is a great time for our reminder that every child is different.
Yeah.
If they aren't ready, if they need to consider being held back a year, that's okay. Just remember that children are resilient.
Exactly. And, brains can heal and skills can be taught and learned. Relationships can grow and be nurtured. I think, just every small moment of safe and healthy connection really matters.
Yeah, yeah. So listener, today's takeaway is this. Kindergarten readiness isn't simply about academics, right? It's about helping children feel safe enough to be curious, connected enough to learn, and supported enough to thrive.
And so I think our question is, listener, what small moment will you initiate this week? Could that be a bedtime story about school? Some encouraging words to build up self-esteem, maybe incorporating a new but predictable routine to help ease anxiety. Being that adult who says, I'm here for you, right? I mean, I think these little moments are preparing children, not just for kindergarten, but for life.
Yeah, when we understand the impacts of trauma, we can respond with compassion instead of frustration or some other emotional response.
Because every child deserves the chance to walk into their new classroom feeling hopeful, capable, and ready for a bright future.
Thank you for listening to Vigilant Voices, Henrico Casa's new podcast. We have a vision for all children to live in safe, healthy homes. You can help us make that happen. Tell a friend about our podcast and find us on social media.
I believe in the better days.